back in the shop today, and man, is it full swing build season around here. So I don't know if you can see behind me, but every single car in this shop either doesn't have a hood on it, or the hood's off, or the hood's open. So this one, I was redoing a boost gauge on it last week. Datsun, obviously I'm working on right now, but today I'm back to work on the Datsun here. I'll give you guys a little bit better view of that. So I don't know how well you guys can see, but this thing needs a couple of things. I bought it as a roller, so it's got a rear axle in it, it's got brakes on it, steering parts and stuff. Interior is mostly there, but as you can see, we're missing a power plant. The idea for this car was to pick it up, get a drivetrain in it, get it running, and get an idea whether I like the car or not. All right, looking at this thing a little bit closer, looks like I'm gonna have to take the front and rear doors off. This little piece of trim here, maybe that front fender, I don't know. I think I might have to get it out of the way. There might be some rust underneath that thing I gotta check into. So next step, I think, is I'm gonna try to get these doors and trim off of here without actually hurting anything. I'll try to use the old vice grip garage trick of the old door holder 9000. So hopefully that works. All right, now that I got all the doors off, get a little bit better view in here. Looks like the next thing that's gotta come off is this outer trim here. There's actually a sheet metal screw, I don't know if you can see that, holding that thing on in the front, but the rest of them are just spring clips. And I gotta pull off the door sill trim here, and then maybe some of this edge guard. Maybe get the seats out of the front so I can get an idea. There is a little bit of rust right here. So a little bit of a patch here, maybe a little bit of work here, and up here, a little bit further. There's also a hole right here. So those are all gonna have to be addressed. Hopefully that's just some easy patchwork. It's inside the door jamb anyway, so you probably won't ever see it. And if you do see it and you have a problem with it, well, don't let me know because I don't care. Back here, no real bad news other than you can see from the other side. But it looks like in this seam, there's a little bit of work that has to be done in here. It looks like this is starting to rot. But for the most part, and the thing I'm worried about is the rear wheel arch area. This whole area is clean. Over here you can see this thing is nice and clean, other than just a little bit of rust beginning right here. Otherwise, I don't see anything else that makes me nervous. Just like the other side though, there's just a little bit of rot starting behind the seam sealer here. So that's gonna have to be cleaned out, reworked a little bit. Might be a little bit of an issue here. But even the top of this rocker looks okay over here. Like I said, other than this little piece. Moving forward, it looks like we might have a little bit more of the same kind of stuff going on right there. At the front of this rocker, I got a little bit of like silicone caulk just to keep the water out, which I appreciate the previous owner doing so that this problem didn't get any worse. But it looks like I will need a little bit of a patch right there. I don't know if we can see much back there, but I do see a little bit of rust back behind there. So it looks like this fender is gonna have to come off too. So this is my 72 Datsun. Just barely got to work on it the last time that you guys saw it. Pulled the doors off. I'm getting ready to pull the rest of the trim off, the sill plates, so that I can fix the rust. It has mainly rust in the rockers, but there's a few other places. So I'll give you a quick view here. This here is a hole in the bottom of the fender. That's gonna be patched. And then you can see a couple of holes here in this rocker panel. And I do have brand new sheet metal for this, so just have to finish tearing this down. You can see there's another couple of holes here and some more poking through there. I think that's rot between the seams and the body filler, seam sealer. But this is kind of a look at this car. So, little bit of a rust issue here at the seam of the hatch. It's gonna need to be cut out, remade, welded back in. Over on this side, the rocker is actually a little bit worse. Can't really, okay, there you go. It's actually blown out pretty much all the way up to the front. And there is just a little bit of rust here at the bottom of this fender. So a little patch is gonna be needed there. Overall, this car is really clean, at least from Midwestern standards anyway. Most anything you buy up here is already rusted to death. Probably a couple of the worst spots on the car are where the battery tray used to be. You can see there's a pretty decent sized hole there, and there's some pinholes here in front of it. Hopefully this isn't too difficult to just cut it out, patch in some new metal. It's a bunch of hard lines and stuff that have kind of been pulled out of the way, so there's a lot of brake work, probably some clutch hardline work to do in this car. I did just get a new brake line flaring tool, the hydraulic type, so it should end up making that job a little bit easier. So, without wasting any more time, I'm gonna keep tearing into this thing and get it ready so I can get those rockers cut out of it. All right, we'll bring you in a little bit closer here. Underneath that trim, I was expecting this to be much worse. There is some rust here, there is a hole here, a little bit more corrosion up there. I was actually expecting that to be a whole lot worse. What I am sort of bummed about is underneath that trim, there's a sizable hole in the lower part of this fender. There's already a hole right here. So that fender is gonna need a pretty decent patch. Either that or I'll look at a different fender entirely. However, the front of the trim came off no problem until you get to this guy. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there really isn't much left on the head of that screw. So this guy is going to be a vice grip special, hopefully. Hopefully I can take that out, and hopefully there are no other surprises under this piece of trim. So we'll get this guy out of there and pick back up after that. All right, so trim's off on this guy. And funny thing, trim was actually holding the bottom of this fender on. That thing's all rotted under there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, there you go. Gonna need a little bit of repair on the bottom of that fender. This rocker is far more dilapidated than the driver's side. And that trim clip back there broke. Not because I was trying to break it, but because it's rusty. Otherwise, no huge surprises underneath any of this trim or any of the edge guard in here, except for this guy right here. I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see. Pinch weld's gone, so I'm gonna have to get the seat out of here and cut all this out, make a plate, bring this pinch weld back so that this edge guard has something to clip onto. The only other thing I've noticed about this car is the amount of screws that are all over the floorboard, everywhere. I mean, I vacuumed up a bunch of the, sound deadener, weird spraying material that was put in here from the factory that was left in the floorboard before. But I am not kidding you. There's got to be 100 screws already that I found just floating around on the floor of this car. So don't weld anything, just put more screws in it. I think that's, I think that'll work best. So up here, this is the hole that was previously filled with a bunch of silicone. Focus. So gonna have to get creative here, cut all this crap out, make a little patch for that. Otherwise, from what I can see, doesn't appear to be any major areas of concern other than maybe this guy, but that shouldn't be too bad. I see the evidence here of the rust starting on the back side of this joint. You can see it's kind of in there. So that might be a wire wheel it and hit it with rust converter, and good enough's good enough. I don't think a full restoration is in the cards for this car. So anyway, I think the next step here is I got to pop the fenders off the front, on either side, just because it's going to give me access to the front of the rocker. I plan on using as much of the new rocker as possible because I want all of this rust out of here if I can. And we'll pick up after I've got the fenders blown off. There is a bolt under here. Well, this one had one at some point, but now she's just flapping in the wind. There's a bolt up here. There's several on the top of the frame rail. Here's one. Here's another one. This one here looks like a rusted sheet metal screw, so that will be fun. And then this guy, I think, has maybe 4.5 out of the 6 sides remaining, so maybe we'll get lucky with a Phillips on that. And then there is one more bolt that holds the fender to the front valence, and it's behind the tire here. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that. Probably not. That's okay. I'll pull the tire off, and once I get the fenders off, I'll be able to show that a little bit better. Side markers are going to have to come out on both sides. But once the front fenders are off, maybe you have to pull the seats out, and we can actually start cutting out some rust. I'm going to blow the wheel off here and get a little bit better view on what's left holding this fender to the car. In case you're wondering, every single bolt on the top broke. Saves me a lot of time. I don't have to worry about taking them off, they just snap off. This bolt came out, we got one. This one wasn't here, but there are 2 screws, I think 2 screws left that hold this fender to the lower valence. And then I think it's ready to come off, but both of those 2 screws are stripped. I'll pull the wheel off here and get a better look. One other cool thing was underneath the Baby Moon hubcaps, there was only 3 lug nuts on there. So, as Puddin will say, if 3 won't hold it, 4 never would. Sometimes you like to see all the lug nuts on there, that's all. Oh man, there we go. Look at those things, huh? Massive brakes. What are those got to be? 8, 9 inches maybe? I mean, that's actually more like a foot, I think, right? Because like this is like 6 inches. Remember that? Look at this, a solid brake disc though. It's not even vented. Yeah, it's because these cars don't weigh anything, so it's really easy to stop them, right? All right, quick update for you. This is my first time working on a 510, so I didn't realize that you had to take the headlight out and the headlight surround to be able to pull the fender off. However, I would like to show all of you, these 2 objects are supposed to be called screws. Yeah, you can see the head of that one is half missing and there's barely a slot left in the top of that one. Those actually came out. Rather impressive if you don't mind my saying. So here is the area of the car. At least I've heard that this is one of the places these cars like to rust out, is the upper frame section of the fender here. This may actually look pretty bad, but a lot of this is surface rust, believe it or not. I jabbed this with a screwdriver, whole bunch, just to check to make sure that there wasn't any holes. There is a little bit I have to redo right here, so I can cut this out and make a patch. Probably clean this whole area up and maybe even just replace a whole section. The rest of the jam and stuff, while it's got rust on the surface of the paint, doesn't look too bad until you get down here by the rocker. This stuff here, I don't know if you can see this stuff peeling off. That's just undercoating. So the rest of this, believe it or not, is actually just surface rust. I can knock this down, and maybe even in here that looks like it's a little bit deeper. I can maybe cut that out and weld something new in. But for the most part, this is actually savable. And this will be, one of those paint it with Pour 15 and never think about it again kind of things. That's the update. Sorry I didn't film that. That was a whole lot of me struggling and trying to figure out how these cars come apart. Hopefully tomorrow, when I get onto the driver's side, that one will go a little bit quicker and I can time lapse that one. All right, so seat's out. And as you guys can see, maybe doesn't look like there's any other major problems with the floor, other than it's just dirty. Up here, this is all Dynamat, and I don't know what's under this, but I did find another little hole right there. And then of course, that hole, as we all know. So I think what I'm gonna do now is start trimming the new rocker panel and get that fit up in here, and then try to get that sucker at least tacked in. All right, so just wanna give you guys a quick look at the new rocker. And if you look, you can kind of see a little bit of an indent here. I'm thinking that's where the actual rocker ends. Then I'm gonna have to make a new patch piece for the lower part of the, what is this, the A-pillar. Just holding this thing up on there, if I try to line up the edge right about there, you can see I'm gonna have to take a little bit off of the top of that guy and some off of the back here. So I'm gonna mark this up and get it cut and try to get it fitting just a little bit better. All right, so I took some measurements, or I made a couple marks here. So I'm just gonna cut off, I don't know if you guys can see, I'm just gonna cut off the top section of this just so that it slips right over the existing rocker. And do the same thing back here. So actually cut this off all the way down to this second step and all the way over, just so that it'll slide on there. So I'm gonna get that cut up quick and slip back over here so that we can mark out what we can actually cut off of the car. All right, so the rocker is trimmed to fit. I don't know, you guys probably won't be able to see this very well, but there is a slight contour here to the bottom part of the A-pillar. So I need to get the rocker panel to fit tight to that so that it will meet up with the pinch weld up here. So I'm gonna use the world's cheapest contour gauge to figure out exactly what that shape needs to be. So there it is. So now I can use that profile on the very edge of this piece of sheet metal, I can trace that out, and I can get this thing to fit nice and tight. All right, so rocker's now been trimmed just a little bit. I may have to redo this little contoured piece or just make a separate piece for that, not a big deal. But I think I found just about where I'm gonna pop this thing in. So I wanna mark it with a Sharpie first, and then I'll come back with an actual scribe. Using a scribe's a little tip I got from Casey's Customs. Okay, got this rocker fitting pretty good. There's gonna be a little bit of adjustment needed up there, but it's looking like we can actually mark this thing and get it trimmed out. So I'm gonna mark the edges here and then come in and get all this cut out. All right, so in the front here, this is essentially right where the patch ends. In the back here, just from this edge, and actually I'm gonna use as much of that patch as I possibly can to get all the way back here. So now I'll start the process of cutting out the old crap and trying to get the spot welds ground down and get this thing peeled apart, as there is actually two pieces of metal here. So yeah, that's what I'll be working on now.
Think about a time I almost lost you. I know I was lost too. Had dreams and I lost a few. In flight we enjoyed this view. Floating on the same wing, that's some flight shit. Window seat, knock feet, you're my sidekick. Always wanna run, can't find no one to run with. All these young kids wanna party screaming come with. But you won't take their advice, you make your own. Came here to live a life, make your own. I'm just being honest, don't need those clones. Got my back, cover it with steel. Might go skydiving with my wheels shining bright, don't know how it feels. Can't feel this wind, but I know that it's real. In flight we enjoy the view. In flight we enjoy the view. In flight we enjoy the view.
Got the old rocker, or what's left of it, all pulled off. Ground all spot welds. Good news is the inner rocker and this structure actually looks pretty solid, save for that little piece right there. I'm gonna fix that. But down here, there's just a little bit of rust. A couple of bends I have to pound back a little bit. And then up front here, there's actually kind of a chunk. I don't know if you guys can see, there's actually kind of a chunk of the inner rocker missing right here, out towards the end. It's supposed to be the same height as this flange here all the way across, so there is some of it that's folded in and missing. I think what I'm gonna do now is grind and clean up as much of this stuff as I possibly can, and then I'll make a trip to the store and get some sort of rust converter, and then maybe I'll pour 15 over that, or maybe just straight pour 15, I don't know. But I need to cut out and just add a little piece of sheet metal here just so that I have something to spot weld the rocker to. Otherwise, this rocker panel is close. I've got it roughly fitted. And this right here does not line up because there's actually 2 layers of sheet metal there. I don't know if you guys can see that. So the rocker is actually supposed to sit a step down from this A-pillar piece. So that's why that might not look exactly perfect. But this rocker is gonna take, and that back there you can see, it is gonna take a little bit of forming and convincing once it's started to tack weld to the car. These bends are really close. They follow the original rocker shape pretty well. However, I think from sitting around or being handled and stuff, some of the bends have opened up just a little bit. I am gonna have to tighten up some of the bends just so that everything meets up. But I think what I'm gonna do now, like I said, is get all this stuff stripped down and prepped the best I can, and then get some sort of, rust converter or something on that just to get this thing good enough. And then I'll also work on zapping in just a little piece up here, just so that I have some clean metal to weld to once I get this rocker fitting really well. That's what I'll work on now. Some of you might appreciate this, I don't know. This is the pile of what was left of the rocker panel and all the little ghibli bits and pieces of crap that came off of that car. Hopefully next time you see this, I should have the rocker fit in there and at least be tack welding it to get it to finally stick to the damn thing. So anyway, yeah, just wanted to show the pile of crap that came off of it. I always think it's satisfying when you cut out a bunch of junk and then look at how much awfulness you cut off the car. So that's it. After I took the cheek poker to this guy, this hole grew by quadruple the size, so definitely needs some sheet metal there. And then most of this frame support, there's a couple of spots here where the rust got a little bit deep, but then I see a pinhole here, and then there's a much bigger hole over here. Otherwise, it looks okay. Most of the metal is solid, so I think I'm gonna do a patch in this area and definitely one in this area, some heavier plate, and get that fixed. Then I'll hit that with primer and some sort of paint on top. Same thing is going to happen here. I planned on patching this already, so I'm just going to cut this all out and form a little piece in here to be a patch, make that one happy. Under here, I just have to make this little piece for the end. Otherwise, I got all the other little spot welds ground down on here. I did not grind these down up here yet. I do have to hammer and straighten out a couple of waves I put in this inner rocker when I was pulling the outer piece off. And then there's like a reinforcement piece here that is a little bit rusty, so might shoot that with some rust converter and maybe some top coat, just to try to keep everything from getting any worse. But getting very close here. I don't know if I'll get the rocker tacked in yet today, or if I think I'll be able to get this little piece tacked in, and then maybe start putting the rocker in. I don't know. Otherwise, that's kind of where we're at for today. Rocker's trimmed pretty close to fitting. There's just a couple other patches up there that need to be done before I put any paint on anything. So I'll check back in when I figure out what to do for today. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. I don't know how well you can see, but I got that new piece patched in here. And this actually looks worse than it is. This is like, I think that's undercoating of some sort, maybe. So that actually probably looks worse than it is. But anyway, yeah, so need a little bit of hammer work on the back of that, but obviously the front of this here is going to be replaced, and the whole bottom of this fender and stuff. So this whole section will be new. I think that is where I'm gonna call it for today, unless I find some motivation on my way back from the store. All right, I think that's gonna wrap it up. Put in a solid couple hours on the old Datsun here, and I think we're ready to coat as much as we can with the rust converter tonight for anything that I'm not gonna cut out and patch. I don't know if I'm gonna mess with the front fender first or if I should just focus my time on getting the rocker done. Probably switch gears and get the rocker first and then finish up the rest of the stuff with the fender after that. The rest of the rocker is pretty well prepped and it's fitted okay. I think it might need a little bit more fine tuning and stuff, but I won't really know what it's gonna need until I actually start maybe attaching it a little bit, because it's fitting close now, but it is gonna need a little bit of tweaking and stuff because some of those bends aren't quite right. I plan on running to get a body hammer tomorrow because I actually don't have a body, fender hammer and dolly set yet. So I plan on picking those up just so that I can tweak those bends a little bit and try to make those line up a little bit better. But my initial reaction was these rocker panels fit like shit, but actually, they actually do bend and follow the shape of the original rocker pretty well. Like most of this shit, I'm not really a body guy. I just did this because I really like this car. So you always go to school on the first one. My hope is that once I finish up this side, I'll learn a few things and then jump over to the driver's side and it'll be simpler over there. Maybe a little bit less cutting, maybe be a little bit more efficient with ripping off the rusty stuff. Oh yeah, forgot to film an outro again. So that's where this episode's gonna finish up. Next time you see the Datsun, we're gonna work on it a little bit more. I ordered some different sheet metal for it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.